Peggy 16.
Hello and welcome to another video of ICT Tech Gaming. This is my review of Crusader Kings 3. I've had a few hours now playing this game and giving it a bit of a go, so I thought now's the time to essentially show you guys my thoughts and views on it and see whether that will help you choose whether this is the game for you. Now I know I'm a little bit later than most to the review side of this game, but I wanted to give it a couple of weeks just to essentially get itself settled and have a few updates, because I know they changed quite a bit in the first update. So what we're going to do is we're going to get straight to it. You're going to see the intro and then we're going to go through the specs, the gameplay, the settings, and we'll just see whether this is something you guys will feel is the type of game you would like to play.
The first step in avoiding the trap is knowing it is there. Real strategy requires cunning. Remember that, and your dynasty will rule this land through the ages.
Okay, so we're in the main menu now. So this is basically what the first screen you are introduced with when you're actually looking at the game. Now you can see you've got your main options on the left hand side, and then you've got your family or dynasty on the right. Now the ones that you see there will be different depending on what campaign you're running and what characters you've got. So these are the characters I'm running with at the moment on my quest to get East Anglia as the dominant nation. So if we go into the settings, you can see graphically it's got a decent amount of settings. It's not like fully loaded, but it's got a decent amount. You've got obviously your display modes, your resolution, your V-Sync. It also tells you type of monitor you want to play on. So if you've got two monitors, you can switch between the two, or if you use the extended screens, I suppose you can use that as well. Also the graphics card, so it makes sure it's picking up the correct graphics in case you've got an APU as well as a GPU. And then you've got your scaling, your GUI scaling. Now, realistically, 100% I think is more than enough. It's quite a big, chunky GUI on this game to begin with anyway. You've got your quality presets as well that you can choose. So your anti-aliasing, texture quality, texture filtering even, reflection quality, shadows and all this. I mean, it's not a very demanding game graphically. So, I mean, I've got mine set absolutely the highest it can go. And to be honest, it really does not have that much of an impact. So you should find that you can play this game on most modern computers. Obviously if you're playing on a potato, then you may find you have to turn it down slightly, but for the most part, I mean, I've got a 5820K, which is obviously 2014, and a 5700 XT, and it is running this absolutely fine. Now I do have 32 gigabytes of RAM, which obviously does help on certain tasks, but to be honest, I think anything from 16 gig will be fine as well, possibly even less. You probably get away with 8 gig on this particular title with minimum kind of impact to the game. It's not a FPS intensive game because it's much more slower paced. But then if you go to the audio, obviously the audio is what you expect, not much here, but you've got your master music, your sound effects, ambience and interface sounds. It's pretty much all you need in this game. There's not really a mass amounts when it comes to audio here. And then on your settings, you can change language. It's got quite a decent selection of languages. Autosave, which is a very key thing, which is basically do you want to do every month, every year, every 6 months. I've generally just left it as every year. Now the tooltip modes, the one thing I should explain to you, which is something you should change and they should really have as default, it goes on timer lock as standard. Now timer lock is absolute rubbish because what it does, it means when you get a tooltip, you've got to go over it for so many seconds before it will then lock in place. What you really want to do is change it to the one just below it, which is action lock. I don't know why they haven't used this as default, but they just haven't. So I do urge anybody that does buy the game, that is the one thing they should be changing. And what that does is you then hover over the tooltip, and then you can press the middle mouse button, and what that will do, that will then hold it in place. The reason this is important is because if you go over certain tooltips, you will see that there may be other things that you might want to go over, because the tooltip can sometimes have another tip in the middle of the tooltip. So you want it to lock in place, so then you can hover over that and it'll expand on that particular tooltip a little bit more, because sometimes it's got bullet points on the tooltip. It's quite an intensive game on that respect. But by having action lock, it just means it's a lot quicker. You press the middle mouse button, it locks, you can go straight across, which means you're not hovering over waiting for seconds for it to lock in place. So it's definitely something worth doing just to make the gameplay move a little bit quicker, so you're not waiting around for so long, because it does start to get a bit tedious and annoying after a while if you leave it on there. Other than that, you've got your different settings for the tooltips. Edge scrolling, you can leave it on or turn it off. This is one of the first Crusader Kings, from my knowledge, which have WASD as moving the camera around. Before, it was always edge scrolling or the arrow keys, whereas now they've moved it to the typical WASD, which is quite nice. The other tutorials, it has a really good tutorial in it, so it's definitely worth keeping that on to go through when you first start, because it is such an intensive game. There's so much to do on it that you will get lost if you don't use it. But then there are a lot of guides to show you. I'm putting up the system specs now for you. As you can see, in yellow is the minimum and the green is the recommended. So you can see, looking at this, it doesn't need a powerful machine to run, which is quite common with Paradox games. And the actual game itself on my system was running with no issues, no frame drops, and was running at pretty much as you would expect. Paradox Interactive, which are the people that make this game, are not new to the grand strategy style. So anyone that's had any history with using Paradox games, whether it be Stellaris, Hearts of Iron, or any of the previous games, will know what this type of game is like, because they are masters at making grand strategies and really in-depth games, which is why I always say it's recommended on this type of game to play the tutorial. So fans of Paradox games are probably going to like this game as well, and fans of the era or like this type of style or grand strategy, something that needs a bit more tactics and stuff like that, will probably enjoy it as well. Now the game itself, you can do anything from being lords right up to kings, and you can essentially, it is a sandbox game. That basically means you can play this game how you see fit, whether it be through diplomacy, through wars, through basically claiming territories by having a claim to them, and then basically justifying your claim. You can go about it pretty much any way you want to. You can even go through stealth tactics of after making a claim, assassinating the current lord, king, or whatever title that person may hold, to try and then stake a claim to the territory as the rightful replacement to it. So it's got a very in-depth system, and it is something which takes a long time to learn, but once you master it, you can run through it pretty quickly and easy, and it is good fun. Now, the map itself covers the whole of Europe pretty much, and you get some of Africa, India, and the Middle East as well. And it's kind of set all around that kind of 800 AD kind of era, and past that essentially. So you're kind of talking in terms, I say, on my playthrough, I was the Lord of East Anglia, and I was essentially there during the times of Jorvik and the Norse Viking invasion of the UK. And you had Alfred, who before he was known as Alfred the Great, which was Alfred of Wessex. Now, in reality, what really happened is Alfred ended up uniting the lords and the houses of England into one common goal of fighting the Vikings and pushing them back. Now, that then ended up him becoming the king, and he became Alfred the Great. Now, what I'm trying to do is circumvent that and basically make it so my lord becomes King of England, which I did end up achieving. So all of a sudden, East Anglian house became the dominant house of England and united them back into a uniform front. Now, you can run as pretty much any faction in the game, even down to the minor houses. You have a campaign which will follow the main story arcs, let's say Alfred's or whoever else that's there, even down to like Oliver Cromwell and stuff like that. But you also can do anything down to the minor factions and then try and change the course of history using them. So the game has so much depth to it and such a steep learning curve, but once you get your head round it, you will start flying through it and really being able to use it to its full. Now in the game you have a lot of random events that happen as well, and it's classed as a dynasty style game, so it's not about finding an end game and basically conquering the whole of Europe, although you probably could do that if you tried. I mean, essentially you could even reunite the Roman Empire and stuff like that, so you can literally do so much on this game, and you can start your own kingdom, you can break off from things, you can do whatever you feel fit to and feel like you want to do. So I've even changing it from the Kingdom of England to essentially I'm thinking of changing it to something completely different just because I can. Now what happens is when your character dies, if you've got a rightful heir, which is family, then you will then take over as them essentially. So you have to kind of make sure that you've got your dynasty set and you've always got somebody to follow on from you. The game ends when your family line ends. That's essentially the end game. So as long as you've got somebody alive and well, then the game will carry on and continue. Now, and there's multiple different ways you can run through this game. Like I say, you can start in, I think it's 857, I think it is, or 1066 is the other starting date essentially, depending on the type of campaign you're running. You can do anything from being an absolute sod to being the nicest kingdom leader possible, and you can change all the policies, whether you want to go into cannibalism, dating family, or even just playing it as you would if you were in charge of a normal life kind of thing. You can do anything. You can be as nice to your subjects or as horrible as you possibly can feel the need to be, and you can change any laws, rules, way of elections or getting your heir or who takes over. You can change all that, but the one thing you always got to take into consideration is you've got to keep your enemies close, because they will always try and double cross you or something as well, and friends may not stay friends forever. So it's got so many twists and everything like that. It's so in depth, but it is good fun. So I do highly recommend it if you enjoy that strategy or grand strategy style. When it comes down to the sounds and the music and things like that, this game has got it spot on. I mean, the music in this game is so atmospheric, and when you start like a crusade or a war, you get like proper dramatic music coming in, and it is fantastic. It is such good to hear and listen to. What I'll try and do is put a little snippet up for you to listen and see what I mean. But you also, the sounds itself, you've got like the sound of all the people working, moving, swords hitting when they're fighting stuff. I mean, the sound design for the main campaign is quite basic because it's all done from a bird's eye view of the map essentially. But the music, it makes it so atmospheric that it really kind of captivates the era and the dramatic side of the actual game and what you're doing. But in conclusion, my general thought of the game is I've really enjoyed playing it. In fact, I've managed to unite England now under the East Anglian rule, and I'm almost going to change it to the East Anglian Empire as well, just because I can. And then my next goal is to try and then incorporate the whole of the UK into it, and then move across possibly into Western Europe. So you like I say, you can do what you want with the game and stuff like that. The game itself is so in depth, it's good fun. I'm really enjoying it. It is great good fun. I'm going to keep playing it. I think if you like the grand strategy and if you've got the patience to be able to do something like this style of game, you're going to enjoy it. If you like your history, again, you'll probably be able to enjoy it. If you want to recreate it, or you want to change it, let's say you want the Vikings to win and take over the UK completely, then you can take a chance and see if you can do it. So you can do so much with it, and if that's the type of person or the type of player you are, you're going to really enjoy this type of game. If you're a little bit more into your like fast-paced kind of twitch shooters or something like that, this probably may not be the game for you. I mean, it is included on the Xbox Game Pass on Windows at the moment, so feel free to give it a go and try that and see how you feel. It's a bit of a try before you buy, I suppose, and you're not losing anything if you do have the Xbox Game Pass already. So it is definitely worth looking at on that side of things. Generally, if you're a strategist type player and you like your strategy games, I would highly recommend giving this a go. It does take a little bit more patience, and it's a little bit more in depth than some things, like if you're used to things like Total War or even like the old Age of Empires RTSs. This is not quite the same as that, and it's a lot more in depth, but once you get your head around it, it is good fun. So it's got so much scope, and there's going to be a lot of DLCs if I know what Paradox are like, and I know they've got an expansion pass as well, so they are already planning a lot for it. And people are saying Crusader Kings 2 is much more in depth at the moment, but then that's had years of development going for it. I mean, this sequel has taken a long time to come out, and I do feel once they manage to add all the extra bits into this one, it will start becoming the best Crusader Kings you've ever seen. So this has been my review of Crusader Kings 3. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, hit a like, subscribe to the channel, get the bell on to see any future content. I do also stream on Twitch and on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and usually Sundays as well, so feel free to pop across. I may sometimes stream on the odd day in between as well, but those ones are the guaranteed days. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I've got another one coming up shortly, which is going to be a retro review of an old LucasArts game. So I hope you look forward to that, and I look forward to seeing you guys and seeing your reactions to that. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.